Thank you so much for being here, Mark. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on, and I'll touch more on this during the webinar, but congratulations on your recent award for Global Marketer of the Year.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep. It was kind of nice, but kind of a reflection of everybody else's work. So
Yeah, I read that in there. And I'll share a little bit more once everyone starts getting here as well. But I had originally heard you speak at the Standout Leaders Program with Procter and Gamble a few years ago.
oh yeah.
And I heard you speak there, and I remember you saying that you were an IU alum, and I was like, I'm an IU guy, a future IU alum. We got to get connected with this guy.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad you did. Yeah.
Well, I think we still have a few more people trickling in, but let's start with introductions, and then
Okay.
we'll jump in. So the way tonight's going to work, just for everybody here. First of all, thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited to have you all with us. We have people joining us from all over the country, both in the Cincinnati area, the Indianapolis area, of course, in Bloomington, and then who knows where people are in from across the U.S. By way of introduction, my name is Blake Bradley. I'm the president of Kelley Student Government, and I'll be tonight's moderator. And then, Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
And I'm Marc Pritchard. I'm the Chief Brand Officer for P&G and IU alum.
Fantastic. And this session is a part of our ongoing efforts through Kelley Student Government to continue building our relationship with our alumni network. It's something that makes the Kelley School of Business special. And as a board member of the Alumni Association, I'd like to say thank you to you, Mark, for coming back and donating your time to students.
Happy to be here. Love IU. I miss IU. Wish I was there.
A lot of us miss IU too. This year, obviously, with COVID, we haven't been able to enjoy every instance of it, but it's been good.
Yeah, yeah. Have you been able to get to any basketball games or anything, or is it all social distance or no fans or all that kind of stuff?
No fans at all. We're doing home gating. So, within 10 people in your home, you can have a little home gate. But other than that, there's no tailgating or any sort of public celebration.
Oh my, that's a lot different. That's for sure. So,
And of course, the one year we're a good football school and doing well in basketball. I mean, of course.
of course. So you have the home gate. Okay. Well, all right. Better than nothing, right?
Exactly.
At least you get to drink.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, that's wonderful. And just in case all of you who are just joining, Mark just won a really wonderful award as Global Marketer of the Year, which is a really big honor on behalf of the entire Procter & Gamble brand team. And it's one of the biggest awards you can win in that category. So congratulations again on that, Mark.
Oh, thanks, Blake. And you said it. It's really a reflection of the tremendous work that P&G brand builders and P&G people did during 2020. I'm lucky. I'm privileged to be able to represent them all. So it was kind of a award for all of us. So we were kind of excited about it.
That's great. That's really great. Well, the way tonight's going to go is we're together here until around 5 o'clock Eastern time. I want to reserve about the first 30 to 45 minutes for you and I, Mark, just to have some conversations, answer some questions that have come from the audience and also members of our student government team. And then I want to leave the last 15 minutes for kind of an open Q&A where people can put questions in the chat, and then we can answer some of those if we have time.
Great.
Excellent.
Okay.
The first question I want to ask is, Procter & Gamble has made it a stance, and specifically within the brand management team, to take very strong stances on social issues, and specifically regarding the George Floyd murders and a lot of the horrible racial atrocities that we saw over last summer. So as a leader in this, what would you say is a large company's role like Procter & Gamble in corporate social responsibility?
This is something that I felt very strongly about for many years. Actually started back in over 20 years ago when I was running our CoverGirl business at the time. I happened to be on a spiritual retreat with my family. Actually, there's pictures of them all here, and they were all young men. And the leader of this at the spiritual retreat came up to me at the end and he said, I hope you know the good you can do because you're in business, and business will someday be the greatest force for good in the future. And it was like this, he said, if you choose to do so, you can do a lot of good. And I was like, wow, this is like this blinding moment of clarity. And so, at that time, I realized that what we did made a difference. So even then, CoverGirl, the standard of beauty that we were representing was more stereotypical. The spokespeople were too young, too thin, too white, and it was kind of this objectified, stereotypical standard of beauty. So we made a change. We made a lot of changes there. So we brought Queen Latifah in and a number of different people, and it just really transformed how that brand showed up, and I think how people saw themselves. I fast forward that to 2020. 2020, it became inescapably clear that business had to step up to be a force for good. It's not just enough to be a force for growth. You've got to be a force for good. And you've got to focus on social and environmental issues. And 9 out of 10 people feel better about a brand if it supports a social or environmental cause. More than 60% of people are buying on the basis of shared beliefs with a brand. And more than 2/3 are also expecting brands to take a stand. So it's really critical now that brands and businesses step up and take a stand on social issues and environmental issues, because we have such a huge impact, and we have huge reach, and we have the money to be able to make a difference. So it's a big reason why we've made it core to who we are and what we do.
And just for context, for those of you all who are listening, Procter& Gamble is the number one global advertiser by spend, correct?
Yep.
And so,
And by reach too, but for all, we reach more than 5 billion people. So it's a pretty big, I think we actually somebody just edged us out recently on spend, but spend is actually less important than how many people you reach.
well, that was one of the biggest things that really struck me when the first time I heard you speak at the Procter& Gamble Standout Leadership Program was you don't realize how many Procter& Gamble products are around you at all points. And how many of the, you see a Gillette commercial and you think, oh, Gillette's different than, a different, one of the different brands. But at the end of the day, it's coming from, the same visionaries like yourself and your team.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's Gillette, Venus, Crest, Oral-B, Vicks, Metamucil, Pantene, Head and Shoulders, herbal essences with Sassoon, Old Spice, Secret, Olay, Tide, Dawn, Febreze, Always, Pampers, Charmin, Bounty, Puffs. Anyway, other than
that was impressive. That was almost like a trivia question.
yeah. So yeah, we're pretty pervasive. And so, and because we reach 5 billion people, and advertising is probably the most pervasive form of media. If you think about it, people are just, ads are everywhere. And so how we portray people and messages we put out there make a difference in terms of how people see the world. So that's why we take this responsibility seriously.
No doubt. And one thing I know that you're proud of and members of your team are proud of is a lot of the work, and some of the most notable ones I think are the Like a Girl campaign, The Best a Man Can Get. The Question was another big one at the time when we had the Standout program. Can you talk to us a little bit more about kind of the thought process and the conversations around those sort of initiatives, and then maybe give us some context for those of the listeners that aren't familiar?
It's a great question, because these are we have some prior, we call them citizenship priorities, to be a good citizen. Some people call it purpose, we call it citizenship. And this is for us to be a force for good and a force for growth in areas where we think we can make a big difference. So we focus on equality and inclusion, environmental sustainability, and community impact, underpinned by ethics and corporate responsibility. So we use our brands, the voices of our brands, to make a difference. We start typically with, actually all of our brands, we expect our advertising to accurately portray people, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, religion, age, socioeconomic status, because accurate portrayal means you can eliminate bias. Because when people see stereotypes or objectification or diminishment or denigration, then that creates bias. So our ads, first and foremost, accurately portray people. Then what we do is we periodically take a stand. So for example, Always. Why did Always do Like a Girl? Well, Always is a period protection product. It focuses on providing period protection, and that starts when you enter puberty. And what Always found is young women, when they enter puberty, have a significant drop in confidence relative to boys. And a lot of that doesn't come because they have their period. It comes because of insidious phrases like, you do that like a girl. So insults. So they decided to flip that and make Like a Girl mean amazing things. So why, so really that brand served young women, and that's why they could focus on that particular message. Olay is a skincare brand that focuses on, obviously, on, facial cream and facial products and everything. They came up with this idea called a campaign called Face Anything, and it's Face Anything, which makes sense for the brand. And then they're facing all sorts of things. They're facing bias. They're facing gender myths. They actually stepped up after George Floyd was killed and faced racism. They're now facing the bias that women about women in STEM, and so they have a major STEM program. So these the brand picks its idea and what makes sense for that brand, and then uses its voice to go out there and talk about what their view is. And Gillette was a classic one where Gillette had actually had some sins to to get over, because they had in the past not really portrayed women in the most flattering way. And so what they decided to do after the Me Too movement is they had to really modernize what this brand meant. And it wasn't just the best a man can get, it was the best a man can be. And they focused on things about that they believed in, which is it's not enough not just to not objectify women, or not to not sexually harass. You need to step up and be a role model for gender equality, and that's when we came out with We Believe. So anyway, those are some of the things that we've done, in order to be able to convey the points of view of the brands, and then take a stand, like the ones you saw in Standout, like the talk and the look and the choice, which were very much focused on shining the light on bias and racism, to promote racial equality.
Yeah, and I just added a few links to the chat for anybody who's here with us. Maybe not check them out right now while we're talking, but definitely check them out after the panel.
Yeah.
I added the best a man can be, and the different website you have regarding taking on race, which I know there's a variety of different things. I believe you even released a short film that won some awards, correct?
Yeah, well, actually, there's been several. The talk has won probably 100 awards. The look has won several awards as well, and actually, it depends on what you're thinking about. Actually, Gillette just released a film called Cost of Winning. So we tend to get fairly awarded on these, but that's not that's important, because people pay attention to it. But what's most important is that it starts conversations,
Right.
and those conversations then lead to empathy, understanding, and eventually action.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about what you do as a leader to create a culture of this within your organization, within the people you're with. But obviously, Procter & Gamble is known for having a very strong corporate culture in general.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we talk a lot about in Kelley Student Government is the idea of active leadership. So how do you inspire every member of your team to come to work and want to be a change maker in the way that they run their brands?
Well, I think part of that is just a big part of that is people who come to P&G want to make things happen. They're leaders by definition. I mean, that's really, we recruit for people who want to do things, and high brain power, and ambition, but ambition actually in the area of wanting to make things happen. People who want to take action. So it's actually not that hard to inspire people to want to do things. I think what matters the most is constantly articulating that vision of what's possible. We want to make sure that we're first and foremost, providing people with the absolute best products and brands that we possibly can. So our core strategy is one, we call it of irresistible superiority. We're going to make sure our products, packages, communications, retail execution, and the value of our products, of our brands, are irresistibly superior, better than any other choice. So, and when we do that, we're number one. And when we're number one, we actually grow the market in addition to growing our market share and growing the category. And then all boats rise. And then we use the means of that in order to do good, and then focus on doing good in the areas that I talked about before. So just articulating the vision and shining the light on great examples, that's actually probably the best way to really motivate people. I spend most of my time talking about other people's work. It's like when I told you the marketer of the year thing. Hey, look, that's because what I've been doing is I've been talking about all the great work that P&G people are doing. So when you shine the light on what others are doing, it's incredible how motivating that is. And so I spend a lot of time going around and in different talks externally as well as internally, and just saying, here's a great example of wonderful work. And that's really inspiring to people and drives people to want to do more.
You're lucky Procter & Gamble has great people. I mean, I love everybody that, Procter & Gamble is a great partner with IU and the Kelley School. And so I always love going out to their events or their case competitions and just always seeing what's new and happening.
Yep. Yep. Oh,
Well, I want to talk a little bit. I'm a supply chain management and sustainable business major. So we've touched on my personal interest in kind of the sustainable business, both with CSR, but I want to focus on the business aspect and the business implications of this.
sure.
One example that I love is Tide. There was something I saw earlier that Tide kind of ditched the big plastic jugs and went to the cardboard, the cardboard with the bag inside, which makes it lighter for consumers in the city. And if I understand, there was quite an increase in sales. And so, can you talk a little bit more about the business implications of Procter & Gamble being a leader in CSR?
Yeah. I mean, in CSR, we talk about the social aspect of that. Everything that I described to you about how we use our voice and how our advertising, what it does in terms of how it portrays people and points of view, it actually increases the trust rating of our brands and increases purchase intent because people, one, they see themselves, two, they see a good message, three, they see an insight that makes sense to them, and then four, they see that must be a good company and that must be good brands. So it increases trust and increases purchase. That's good for business. Now, sustainability, you mentioned the eco box, which was one example. We're now building sustainability into all of our business model, our products, our packaging, everything we do. So that's good for business. And here's why. Because there's increasingly people, they are looking for sustainable solutions, but they also don't want to trade off performance. So our job is to innovate and find a way to be able to create a product or a package that is as good or even better than the current choice or better than any other choice, and it's sustainable. So the EcoBox, it works as good as plastic, but it's paper, so you can recycle it. Tide has another thing that they're coming out with, which is cold water cleaning. It can clean. So most washing machines, you have to heat the water up to 90 degrees Celsius in order to be able to wash. And so you wash in hot water. Well, they have created a formula that you can turn the heat down to 30 degrees Celsius. So basically, it's either cool water or even cold water. And what that does is that it reduces the amount of energy you use to wash your clothes by 80%. That 80% reduction in energy reduces emissions. The majority of emissions for our products happen in home, in usage. So when you can turn that down, it's good for the environment. Washing in cold is good for the environment. And by the way, it's actually better for your clothes because it cleans just as well, and then it doesn't damage your clothes because it doesn't overheat them. So that's a great. Why wouldn't you do this? So anyway, that builds the business. Another example I'll tell you quickly, and you've seen. I don't know who here. I was going to raise everybody's hands. Who has a dishwasher? An actual automatic dishwasher. If you have an automatic dishwasher, you need to use it. You should use it every night. In fact, you don't have to even load it up full of dishes. All you have to do is put 8 dishes in there, and it will use less water than if you wash 8 dishes by hand, because that dishwasher uses 4 gallons of water every cycle. Versus when you use the faucet, it pours out 4 gallons of water every 2 minutes. So the bottom line is use a dishwasher, you're going to save a lot of water and you're going to save a lot of energy. And because Cascade is so good, you don't have to pre-rinse either. So you save a lot of water there too. That's good for the environment. So I've given you two innovations. One saves energy, one saves water. Increasingly, more and more of our products are using natural ingredients. Always uses cotton. Tampax uses cotton. We've got other things like on Charmin and Bounty where they use fiber, but they also, for every tree that they harvest, they plant at least one, and make sure that the forests actually remain as forests. They only use certified materials, so they make sure that they're enhancing the forestry. So all of these things are things that we do in the supply chain to be able to make our products sustainable and allow people to responsibly consume them.
Well, I love to hear that. My roommates and I were just arguing this morning about not pre-rinsing. And I said, I just saw a commercial that said you don't have to pre-rinse.
Don't do it.
They said you're crazy. And we do use Cascade. So I think we're in good shape.
All right, do it.
That's good to know. Now I can tell them and we solve the argument. We don't have to. Well, that's fantastic. One other thing about supply chain that I wanted to touch on, I told my professor I would, so I have to.
Okay.
Is leadership in the supply chain. Procter & Gamble is obviously a leader in mission and vision and citizenship. And how do you make sure that all the way through the supply chain, all the way down to the raw material producers, how do you make sure that that vision and mission makes it all the way there?
Oh, absolutely. Part of what we expect our suppliers, and we actually work with suppliers. So first of all, when we go out and sourcing is a very strategic part of our business. So it's you can get a career at P&G and you can work in the purchases organization and strategic sourcing. One of my core partners is always in purchases to figure out how to source effectively. We work on getting a set of suppliers that are the most innovative and the highest quality. So very, very high standards. You have to qualify essentially to be a P&G supplier. So that means you have to have very much impeccable quality, very, very consistent in terms of materials, and you need to be an innovator. So we're always looking for innovations because we get so many of our innovations come from our suppliers who come up with new ingredients or new methods or new ways to be able to create things. So and we communicate that to our suppliers and we communicate it externally as well. So it's very important. Being a P&G supplier is an important part of our supply chain, and we count on our suppliers. In fact, in terms of our company as well, the biggest part of our spending is in the supply chain in terms of our products. So very important. I would also be remiss if I didn't tell you that we also consider not just our product supply chain important. We consider our creative supply chain and our media supply chain. We literally think about it as a supply chain. So we are communicating now to our agencies who create products, create ads, create content, as well as our people who produce our products, directors, production crews, as well as our media suppliers. So the media broadcasters and digital platforms that we work with. We have very high expectations for them as well. We expect them to have diversity in their ranks, consistent with the population. We're working now on a major improvement in terms of getting directors of our commercials. We want at least 50% of them to be women, and then we're also working on getting to the point where 40% are either Black, Hispanic, Native American, Asian Pacific American. So it mirrors the population that we're serving, and and that's a supply chain initiative that we're doing in the creative supply chain.
That's incredible. Yeah, a lot of times you just think of the manufacturing supply chain, but it goes so far beyond that.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to jump and talk on the front end of the supply chain and talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the uncertainty that came along with it. Of course, I heard Procter & Gamble ads on Spotify and different places regarding the toilet paper shortage. I know that was a huge thing, and I'm sure that it was something to manage from the brand perspective as well. So can you tell us a little bit about how your team dealt with COVID-19 uncertainty, and then maybe within the context of the panic buying?
Well, look, I remember this very well because it was last year on March 11th when our chief communications officer, Damon Jones, came to me and said, "Hey, Mark, we have to tell everybody that we're shutting down tomorrow." and we're going to all go home and work from home. And our manufacturing teams and distribution teams had to go home at first, but then we got them back to work right away. So it was a very big deal to shut everything down and get people to start working from home. Because job one, why did we do that? Job one was making sure that our employees are safe and healthy. Job two then was making sure that our products were available, and that's where we got the dispensation from the government to be able to get our manufacturing and distribution workers back into our manufacturing plants to produce. They're the real heroes of COVID in our company, because they've been on the front lines making, packing, and shipping products, and really at kind of the 24/7, three shifts a day, 24, 7 days a week for the last year. And in particular, products like toilet paper and paper towels, for that matter, were in huge demand because, and this, nobody ever wants to run out of Charmin. So that's where, lots of people were going in there. So we had to crank up our machines and make sure that all of our machines were running at the very highest pace, and then and figure out ways to get them even more and more efficient to be able to get the products out there. But that was a big challenge. We're now at a good stage. It was not just toilet paper and paper towels. It was dishwashing products like Dawn, Cascade, for that matter. A lot of our home care products were running out. Microban 24. We actually launched Microban 24, which is it's actually a sanitizer where you can clean a surface, and it leaves a layer of antibacterial product, basically, to kill any bacteria that comes when you touch the surface for 24 hours. So we happened to launch that like a month before COVID hit. Man, I mean, we couldn't make enough of that, so we're cranking it up right now. So how do you deal with that? You have to crank up your machines. But I would tell you the other thing we did is that we changed our marketing as well.
Mhm.
We made sure we looked at every one of our ads and all of our content to make sure that we weren't doing something that just seemed, like we were exploiting the situation in any way. We turned our advertising into how to use these products to get the very best benefit, and a lot more educational work. Why is this the better choice? How do you use this product? How do you get the most out of it? We actually, believe it or not, ran ads on Charmin to use less because we didn't want people to run out. So and you can, because Charmin is a superior product. Anyway, so that's the kind of stuff that we did. It's just kind of changed the way we operate on every front.
Yeah, well, and I know it's been an ongoing thing. It's not done yet. It doesn't seem like, we're definitely still working through a lot of these sort of things. So it's really interesting to see that
No
sort of
question.
change.
Yep.
I want to switch direction a little bit. We have some audience members with us tonight who are coming from our Kelley Compass program, which
Okay.
helps our students learn, how to develop their own personal brand. And so who better to ask than the chief, the number one chief marketing guy in the world? Then what is your advice to students on how to build and develop our own personal brand when we're going to the job force, or we're going, on LinkedIn, all these sort of things? What would be your practical advice to students?
My practical advice to students on you personally is to actually start with defining what do you think, what is your purpose in life? What is most important to you? What do you want to, and what not what do you want to do, but what impact do you want to have? So what's your purpose? Then what are the beliefs that you have about about life and about work? And then what are the characteristics that you want to represent? And when you do that, then you want to then demonstrate those characteristics through action. And then what that allows you to do then is that when somebody asks you a question, typically, because you're going to go through interviews, somebody asks you a question, what do you want to what do you want to do? What's your purpose? You say, here's my purpose. Here's my purpose. My purpose is actually, I want to be useful I literally just very simple. I have one word: useful. I want to be useful to whoever I run into. I want to be useful to the audience that I'm talking to right now, and anybody else that sees it. I've had several meetings since 8 o'clock this morning, and every one of those, I just want to make sure that I'm doing something that would be useful to the people that I'm connecting with. Then and when it comes to beliefs, a lot of those beliefs are very much around integrity, honesty, kindness, love, and I want to be a good husband, father, son, brother, friend, leader. These are things that are they have very seem to have very little to do with business, but they do, because they become the core of your characteristics, and what you represent. And then what I try to do is I try to do whatever I can is just demonstrate that I work really hard. I mean, I will always put 1,000% behind everything, because I want to make sure that I'm doing the best job I possibly can, and then take action in order to try to make the world a better place and do a good job and make sure that whatever either company I'm working for or people partners that I'm engaging with come away feeling like that was a good contribution. So I'm saying these things, and they may not be so marketing focused, but they actually interestingly are. We, for our brands, we have purpose, beliefs, what the brand stands for, what the characteristics are, what their benefits are, what the character is all about, and then what their campaign is. So it's very similar to building a brand, but I think that's what I would advise people to do is just think about that in terms of what kind of a person you are, and then once you have that genuineness, that authenticity will shine through with every engagement you have with people.
I love that. That's like the golden $1 million quote. Like, and it's really practical, I think, because useful. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't ask for any more, you can't ask for anything else than that. I mean, just to provide some value to whatever community it is that you're interacting with.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yep.
like it a lot.
And I just, as the advice I give to people is to, the more you think about others, the better,
Mhm.
because when you're doing that, you're thinking outwardly, and you kind of get outside of yourself, and then that pays back in many, many ways. It pays back first and foremost with how you feel. Often, and this has been empirically proven, people who provide help to others and provide service to others feel better about life in general. So that useful tip is a useful one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm going to ask you to put your father hat on for a second. I think one challenge is that I remember from being a first year student is, everyone tells you, what do you believe in? What do you value? And I don't know. I'm an 18 kid. I have no idea what my values are. And now as a senior, I have a little bit better of an idea through different experiences. But what's kind of your advice to, our younger students who have just gotten to Kelley and who are just learning about what are their values and beliefs? How do you advise somebody to find what they value, to find what they believe in and what they're passionate about?
Yeah, I think about it into my advice is think about it in terms of what are the characteristics that you want to embody of, and think about characteristics of people you admire, people you respect. And it may be people that are, that and it may be people that you don't know. It may be historical figures that you view. I mean, I know as I think back on when I was at Kelley and when I was at IU, I thought a lot about people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Abraham Lincoln, and people. I studied a lot of historical figures in order to be able to understand a little bit about what were the characteristics of those people and why did I admire them. Indira Gandhi is a good example. Maya Angelou. These are people that had something that and what was about them is they all had high intellect, of course, and then there were some that used that in order to be able to do real good, and then make sacrifices in many cases, if you look at, and so, but that led to then this set of characteristics and attributes that I felt were important to embody. Again, integrity, kindness, the truth, being a good son at the time. So that's what I would advise people to be thinking about. And then, but you turn it into, there's the other thing I would give to early, first year students too, is just recognize that, you're going to have to work harder than other people. And that you almost think about that as being something that, that's is so important. We look for people who are just hard workers, who put it out on the field, leave it out on the field, everything out on the field, regardless of what they're of what they're doing. Is that they're really, are giving their all. When you do that, then that will bode well for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to throw back to your time at Kelley, actually, and reflect a little bit on that. We had a question that came before this webinar, someone brought to me was, when you were walking the halls of, well, I don't know if it was Hodge Hall at the time, but I guess the halls of Indiana University,
Yep.
was it your long life goal to be chief brand officer of Procter & Gamble? Or tell us a little bit more about your leadership journey and, how did it end up that you got into corporate leadership?
That's really interesting. Before I came to college, my dad asked me, "What do you want to major in?" And I said, "Journalism." And he said, "No, that's not going to work." He said, "You're going to starve. You need to you need to go into business." So okay, so I went into business and got a finance degree at IU, and but I just figured I was going to get somehow into business, work in business, and I thought, I really, interestingly enough, did not have my sights set on a particular position. I wanted to rise through the ranks. I literally remember dreaming of becoming a vice president. That was my thing. I didn't think about running the company. I didn't think about being chief brand officer or any of that kind of stuff. I just thought of I thought about getting to a level, but I guess the way I would come at it is that I kind of did it one step at a time. In every job I got, I wanted to do a great job in every job I did. I wanted to stand out, distinguish myself in every job, and then move to whatever that next level was and do it, as fast as I possibly could. And so that's really what it was. And I found that was actually more helpful because I moved a step at a time. When you set your sights on a certain high level, that takes a long time in some cases, and that may seem daunting. So a lot of it is just thinking about what's right in front of you, and that's what I ended up doing. And then it was interesting. Then as I thought about this vice president becoming a general manager, my history, I started in finance. I worked at the manufacturing plant as an accounting manager. I came back, worked in our forecast group. I got a corporate job, so I worked for some of our senior leaders at the time. Then I moved into marketing. As I moved into marketing, became an assistant brand manager, associate, then an advertising manager, which is now a level of VP position. So I would have made a VP a lot earlier had I done it later. And then I became a general manager of our skincare business. I was about ready to take an international assignment, and 9 days beforehand got rerouted to move to Maryland to run our cosmetics business, which was CoverGirl. And then there I became president over time, and then became chief marketing officer. So it just kind of meandered. I do remember this. When I wanted to become a general manager, and I became a general manager and became a vice president, then I got there and I said, "Oh, wow, is this it?" So there was this kind of strange feeling. So I felt better when I just focused on doing the right thing and doing good, one day at a time.
And I love that. And if I remember correctly from Standout, I think CEO Dave Taylor has a similar story. I mean, just kind of taking life one step at a time. And I think one thing we talk about at Kelley a lot is just enjoy the moment. I mean,
Yeah.
every moment you've worked for, you've worked so hard for. And so I think if you try to look too far into the future, you're going to end up, tripping on your own feet.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a life lesson. It's just a really, really important life lesson. Is that if if you're doing well one day at a time, that's that's the best way. And you'll look back on then all those days and think, wow, I did a lot of good.
I think that's the best way to do it. I really do. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have about 3 minutes here of, 2 minutes here of questions that I want to ask. So I'm going to ask my kind of closer question, and then we'll
Okay.
get questions from the audience. So,
Mhm.
folks in the audience, if you want to start putting in the chat any questions you have, we'll work through those here momentarily. Mark, the last question I want to ask you is there's a lot of future business leaders, a lot of current business leaders that are in the audience right now. What would kind of be the last message that you want to leave us with, and kind of the last, piece of advice, whether it's fatherly or it's from your position as a chief brand officer or as an IU alum? What's kind of that last little nugget you want to leave us with?
Well, the last nugget I'd go back to the point of focus on being useful, and that you will make the biggest difference that way, and it will make you a lot happier too. Because you will find yourself, going to bed every night and realizing, okay, today I made just a little bit of a difference. So, and then I guess the other thing I would say is find your find your find your passion. And you may not find exactly your passion at right off the bat, but eventually it'll come, and you'll end up finding your destiny. If I think about what's happened in my life is that right now a lot of the work that I do is focused on the citizenship work, being a force for good, really focusing on driving equality and inclusion and eliminating bias and eliminating racism, doing good for the planet. And I realized that that was, my destiny. And I think that I learned a lot of these skills and then got to the point where I was able to use those skills to be able to make the difference that I'm making. Even back when I wanted to be a journalist, what I realized what that does is that I love to write, I love to communicate. And so that helped me in my role, in marketing, and has helped me be able to make a difference as a result of the skills that I've learned along the way.
That's outstanding. Really great. Thank you. Well, I'll stop there. I mean, I could go on all day. You and I can go on. Next time in Cincy, we'll get coffee. But I want to
Yeah.
get to some of these questions we have in the chat here so that people can have their questions answered here. So just so you all know, I'm going to take these in the order in which I received them, just so that nobody gets upset if we run out of time.
Yeah.
The first question comes from the Director of Ethics and Social Responsibility for our student government,
Mhm.
Maddie Athanasiou, and she asked, in regards to increasing sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and social responsibility initiatives for Procter & Gamble brands, how do you go about communicating these initiatives in a genuine way to your consumers and holding your brands accountable to the standards that you have set forth?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of ways we communicate these things. Number one, on pg.com, where our corporate website, company website, we've got several portals that allow you to be able to see how we're doing. In fact, we just recently, put up all of our diversity numbers, so people could see that openly. And then we talked about what our goals were. We've got a take on race site that you can go, so you can learn about the different racial initiatives, racial equity initiatives that we're focusing on. So those are one way to do that. The second, though, is that using our voice in advertising, periodically coming out, expressing a view like on gender equality. During the last 12 months, we've probably done more of that than we've done as a company, that than we've done in many many years. We did one on gender equality called Choose Equal. We did a program called Can't Cancel Pride, because for the LGBTQ plus community, a lot of pride parades were being canceled and celebrations were being canceled. So we said, no, we don't want to cancel that. We created actually a 1 hour show on that, and then created a film called The Pause. I've talked about the talk, the look, the choice. So, we communicate through advertising, because we're a big advertiser, and that's a good way to be able to communicate these points and hopefully help people understand what we're doing, but then also what they can do as well.
That's great. Accountability and transparency, I know, are big, really big things, of course, in the corporate world.
Mhm.
The next one comes from one of our young leaders in Kelley, Philip Burhani, and he wants to know, for those looking to improve as leaders, what would be your advice to those that want to take the first step in improvement?
In terms of leadership, uh, the first step would be, I would think I would probably go back to looking at leaders that you admire, that you already, just because you've seen them behave. Look at what they're doing and what their characteristics are, and also read about them. Learn. Go back and read books about leadership. One of the most profound books that I've read was about. I read recently a book about Frederick Douglass, and I read a book from about Abraham Lincoln and how he managed. It was uh, really led through the Civil War, and it was called Team of Rivals, an extraordinary book that talked about all the ways in which he navigated throughout his rise. First of all, rise to power, choosing a cabinet of all of his adversaries, and then able to manage through the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, and ultimately the 13th Amendment, and so forth. Anyway, it just by doing that, I have found over the years I've learned a lot by reading about other leaders and leadership and the things that they've done, and that would be a starting point, and then start practicing, just leading, trying different approaches is another good way to be able to lead. Stepping up and making things happen, even if you don't know exactly what you're doing, just try.
That's great. And remind us of the name of the book again, that you recommended.
Team of Rivals.
Team of Rivals.
Team of Rivals. Yes.
Excellent. I agree with you. I think reading about leadership is really important as well. I've got a couple books here I'm reading right now. Infinite Vision is one for class about leadership in the CSR community. So a really good one as well.
Yeah.
We have another question here that actually comes from a P&G'er there in Cincinnati and an IU alum as well, Jonathan Levy, and forgive me if I pronounced the last name wrong, but he wants to know which direct-to-consumer brand at P&G do you believe is a leader right now within the enterprise?
The direct to consumer brands. Okay. The ones that we're doing direct to consumer, there's probably two of the biggest ones are Gillette is doing a lot of direct to consumer, believe it or not. But Native is another one that is a part of one of our biggest brands. And they're doing a pretty good job. They continue to grow, and now they're also expanding into retail. There's some very early ones. EC30 is one that is on the kind of on the leading edge. It's a product that is made. It's cleaning products. They are made entirely without water. So major reduction in the footprint of emissions just to make them. And they actually have superior cleaning qualities. And so it's still very early in the direct to consumer phase, but I have high hopes for it to be really big. So I think it'll be big particularly because of the benefits that it provides.
Is that one of the like capsules you put in your own water at home?
Well, they're actually little swatches. They look a little bit like swatches. Yeah, they're like maybe like size of a quarter.
Yeah.
You can take them into the shampoo. You can take it into the shower, and just a little bit of water, and then they're great products.
And that's great for traveling too. You don't have to worry about getting stopped at TSA for having too big of a container.
Absolutely, you don't have that right.
I always lose my shaving cream that way. I don't know why. I always forget that you can't do it like that.
Yeah, anything over 3.4 ounces, and
that's right. Absolutely. I want to get to the next question here, which comes from Shika, who says, first of all, thank you so much for coming and talking with us. And Shika wants to know, do you have any mentors or sponsors that have helped you in your life? And if so, how did you find those sort of role models?
Oh my, I've had just countless mentors and sponsors throughout my life, and just and I'm so thankful for every single one of them. My some of the mentors and sponsors that I think about are, Susan Arnold, who I worked for many years, who was a great mentor and sponsor for me and gave me countless opportunities to be to try to get bigger and bigger responsibilities over time. The So he's one. John Pepper is one of the sponsors. He's actually our former CEO who has continued to be a mentor and a sponsor, giving me advice and counsel over the years. Marina Marr is somebody who was outside of my company, who is she leads her communications company. She's like a consigliere. Whenever I've got problems, I always go to Marina and get her advice. It's so important to have a range of mentors and sponsors. And then one, Dan Edelstein, who was a dear friend of mine who unfortunately passed away. He was an extraordinary mentor and sponsor for me, who gave me all sorts of advice, helped me actually navigate some very difficult business times, and was able to give me some of the best advice I've ever had. So, for example, as I was talking about, one of these things you say is that, stay clean, but be clever. And so it was this actually an interesting point, which is, have integrity, stay clean is what he meant by that. It's just, do the right thing, be the kind of person that is pure of heart, but recognize that there's a lot of wolves in the forest. And so you've got to be a little bit discerning about how actions people take and motives. And why he told me that was because I was such a nice guy that sometimes people took advantage of me. And he saw that. He said, you just got to be a little more discerning here about things and recognize that maybe not everyone's motives are as clean as yours. And so, anyway, that was just one of the pieces of advice that he gave me. He gave me countless other pieces of advice. But I would really encourage all of you, find as many mentors and sponsors as you possibly can. Seek advice, seek diverse views as much as you can.
That's perfect. I know at Kelley, we talk a lot about having your personal board of directors.
Yeah.
Like you said, having diversity on a board of directors for P&G is obviously important, but in your own personal board of directors is important as well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
We have another question here from Catherine, who said that you mentioned it's important to distinguish yourself from your peers beyond just the typical leadership initiatives. What specific things have you done to boost your career advancement potential at Procter & Gamble?
I would say where I focused on distinguishing myself was that I would just take initiative. I would do things. I would have an idea or something that I thought was a bold idea, and maybe a little bit of a crazy idea, but I would go for it, and just had the courage of my convictions. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was running CoverGirl, our advertising wasn't that good, and what was happening at the time is everybody kind of said, you have to test your advertising. You got to make sure that you test it to make sure it qualifies, so to speak. And it was really constraining our agency. And so I said, no, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to do an ad, and we're going to get a campaign, and I will air this advertising on the basis of whether it makes my spine tingle. So I'll air it on judgment. And so we came up with Easy Breezy Beautiful CoverGirl. And so no testing, aired it and went. And it was breakthrough. When I was a CMO, one of the first things I did is establish a partnership with the Olympics. And then that was one thing, but then created an advertising campaign. That was the first P&G advertising campaign. So the proud sponsor of moms, or the Thank You Mom campaign, was the first time we'd ever really put P&G on the map. And that was a bold move because, this was representing the company, and it had never happened. We went for it. And so, those are the kinds of things that distinguish yourself. There was one, actually, interestingly enough, I was the brand manager on Prel. We've since divested it. You probably never heard of it. It's this harsh green shampoo product that was introduced in the 1940s, and everybody tried to restage it and try to fix it. And I was the Prel brand manager, and not the Pearl brand manager. I was the associate director at the time, and we tried to fix it, and we tried to change. We changed everything about it. We made it blue. We put silicone in it so it could actually condition. Anyway, we got some testing back that said it was going to kill the brand, and I said, okay, well, we can't launch this thing anyway. The general manager and the president wanted to launch it anyway, and I said, no, that's a really terrible idea. We can't do that. And so they said, no, we're going to launch it anyway. I said, well, I disagree with that. So I wrote a recommendation not to launch it that went up to the CEO at the time. And everybody said, you're going to ruin your career by fighting these two people. And I said, too bad. This is not the right thing to do. I can't live with myself if I don't at least go forward and express my point of view. Well, it turned out it went all the way to the top of the company. They decided to go forward. um, it actually distinguished me more than anything because I had the courage to just stand up for what I thought was right. Um, Now we launched it 6 months later. It pretty much killed the brand, so I was right. Which didn't matter, but so we ended up trying to fix it anyway. I give that story because it's about having having the courage to do the right thing is one of the things that I believe has been a distinguishing factor, but also the courage to take bold steps and innovate, even if it's wrong, um, and then and then recover when it's wrong. I launched Olay Cosmetics. It was a disaster, um, but we recovered, and I turned around and admitted it quickly, and then recovered. And that recovery probably distinguished me more than the failure of Olay Cosmetics.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's so perfect. And we're talking a lot about failure. And I think that, we have a session coming up here soon planned by some Kelley students called Failing Successfully.
Yep.
It's a whole panel about the value of failure. And it's all about the recovery from failure, like you're saying, that can distinguish you.
It really is. My daughter is studying getting her master's in nursing, and she's
Mhm.
talking about, they're talking about failure right now. And part of what I talked about is, yeah, no, you're gonna fail. You're gonna make mistakes. It's gonna happen. You cannot be paralyzed by that. What you need to focus on is the fact you will make mistakes. You need to recover, and
Right.
that's the best way to do it. And also admit them when they happen, and then learn from them, so you can build systems that may prevent it for the future.
That's perfect. That's amazing. Well, we're on the 5 o'clock mark, Mark. So thank you so much for being here. And again, congratulations on all of your accomplishments throughout the years and for coming back and being an active alumnus.
It is my pleasure, Blake, and thank you all for all of your time, your questions. I see there's still plenty more in there, so I'm sorry we couldn't answer them all. So have me back, and we'll keep going.
It'd be our
Uh,
pleasure.
I hope to go there, and I hope to actually see you all in person there. That would be nice. It'd be nice to get to Bloomington here soon.
And then we can go to Nick's and play Sync the Biz or get a burger or whatever.
There we go. Get a Nick's burger and get exactly eat some of those. Do they still have those pizzas that they had? Those Nick's pizzas?
I don't think so. Maybe they
Okay,
do.
well,
I haven't tried it.
okay, you got to try them. I used to eat some of they were terrible, but but I loved eating them there. So anyway, Blake, thanks a lot. Thank you all.
Thanks.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, wonderful. Have a great night.
Bye. You too. Bye bye.